Linda sat at the kitchen table, staring at her now empty coffee cup. She was patiently waiting for today's conversation with her husband, Jim. Luckily, their kids were still at the neighbors and were supposed to spend the night there. So at least they wouldn't have to be around for all the yelling and screaming she knew was bound to happen. Damn it. It all started with a little innocent flirting and a few lunches. How could she have let it spiral out of control? Linda had felt something was wrong for over a month, but after the last test she took, she knew she had to tell Jim about it. He had gotten up early and went to the store for something, so she sat there waiting for him to return. Linda heard the sound of the doorbell and, almost at the same time, the noise of a large truck in the driveway. Not expecting anyone besides her husband, she assumed someone had just gotten lost and was looking for directions. "Can I help you?" she said, opening the door. "Linda Gardner?" the man asked. "Yes, I'm Linda Gardner." "How can I help you?" she asked again. "I have an order to pack up your things and move them to Southwest 10th Avenue, the man said, handing Linda a clipboard while simultaneously shouting to 4 men in the truck to start unloading boxes. "There must be some mistake. I never placed such an order," she told him, handing back the papers. "Yes, ma'am, I understand. The order was placed by Mr. Jim Gardner a week ago," he replied, showing her Jim's signature at the bottom of the form. "Look, my husband will be back soon, and I'm sure he can clear up this misunderstanding," Linda said. "Mrs. Gardner, I just came from your husband. 20 minutes ago, he told me to give you this envelope if you tried to stop me," the man said, handing Linda a large manila envelope. "Now, if you don't mind, could you show us the master bedroom? We were only given 1 hour to complete the job." Linda opened the envelope and glanced briefly at the piece of paper. Almost in a whisper, she told the worker the first room at the top of the stairs on the right. The men quickly went upstairs and spent the next 40 minutes packing and carrying box after box down to the truck in the driveway. Occasionally, they tried to ask Linda a question, but she remained silent, mentally somewhere else. So, they just did the best they could. 50 minutes after their arrival, they announced that they were finished and ready to leave. "I'll need your signature, Mrs. Gardner," the lead worker requested. Linda scrawled something at the bottom of the paper and they left. Exactly 10 minutes later, Linda's father arrived. "Sweetheart," Ken said, looking at his daughter, stunned by what had just happened. "Jim asked me to come get you, knowing that you probably wouldn't be in any state to drive," he explained. "Your mother is waiting for us and the movers will take your things. We'll put everything in the garage for now and then we'll figure it all out," Ken told Linda, leading her out of the house. "This can't be happening," Linda said out loud as Ken helped her into the car. "Where's Jim? If Jim were here, I could sort this whole mess out with him," she thought to herself. "He would listen to me, wouldn't he?" Half an hour later, Jim returned to the house, but this time with a locksmith. "Change all the locks, including the garage door code," he instructed the locksmith. "Leave me 5 sets of keys, and don't forget to lock the side garage door," he added as he stepped into his now empty house. Going upstairs, he found that the movers had done a pretty decent job considering the schedule he had given them. Looking at his watch, he realized he had only 15 minutes left before the next truck arrived. Grabbing a couple of empty boxes, he finished packing the remaining items the movers had missed, including her cosmetics and things from the vanity in the bathroom. As he carried down the last 2 boxes, the next truck pulled up. His sister, Donna, came in along with the movers. "Hey sis," Jim said, hugging her, "why don't you take the second bedroom on the left, next to the bathroom? It's a lot bigger than the guest room and it has a walk-in closet," he told her. "We'll move the kids' things later." "No problem. What are you going to do with Linda's car?" "Her father is supposed to pick it up tonight after he's done with the movers," Jim replied. "Let me take care of a few things. I'll swing by the office for a minute and I'll grab us some pizza for tonight," Jim said, heading to the garage. "No mushrooms," Donna replied, directing the workers on where to place everything. "Right on schedule," Jim said, checking his watch. From his car, he could see 3 of his best friends having a heated conversation with David, his wife's coworker. And David didn't look happy. About 5 minutes later, Bob, one of the 3 men, walked over to where Jim's car was parked. "He thought we were joking until I pulled out my knife. I gave him 2 options, disappear within 24 hours or experience having his manhood removed and not in a hospital. I told him we'd be back tomorrow to hear his decision," Bob said, smirking. "How are you holding up, man?" "I'll be better tomorrow," Jim replied sadly. "I never thought I'd have to go through something like this, but I'll survive. Anyway, I need to head out now. See you later at my place." Jim gathered the copies of photos and receipts that the detective had left at his office on Friday afternoon. While a shock, Jim had been pacing around him. He knew what was in the envelopes and didn't even bother looking at them. They were just for the lawyer. Yeah, $1,000 down the drain, he thought to himself, glancing at the bill. After leaving the envelope at his lawyer's office, Jim picked up 4 pizzas, a case of beer, and headed home. He planned to get drunk one last time because after tonight, he'd be a single dad and from now on, he'd need to set the right example for the kids unlike the example set by his soon-to-be ex-wife. By the time Jim returned, the truck was gone and Donna and a few of her friends were setting up her new bedroom. "Hey bro." Donna greeted Jim as he made his way upstairs. "Where's all the help you promised me?" she asked. "The guys are finishing up something for me. They should be here in about an hour. How about we take a break and grab something to eat in the meantime?" he suggested to Donna and her friends. Bob and the rest of the guys finally showed up just before 4 p.m. and by 7 p.m. everyone was sitting in Donna's room, drinking beer and enjoying the breeze from the open window. Everyone except Jim. Donna found her brother in the basement watching old home movies. "Everyone's upstairs in my room and we've all eaten. Can I bring you something to snack on?" she asked. "Not right now, sis, but thanks for offering," Jim replied. "I just need some time alone, that's all." "Well, I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything," Donna said. Then she kissed her brother on the top of his head and left, gently closing the door behind her. "I never saw this coming," Jim thought again. "How could I have been so blind?" A little over a month ago, while paying bills online, Jim came across a charge for an examination at the local clinic. "Honey, did you go to the doctor?" he called out to his wife, who was cooking dinner in the kitchen. "I thought I had the flu, so I went for a B12 shot," she called back. "Man, their rates are surprising," he muttered to himself. $125 for an exam and a B12 shot with insurance. "I'll have to call them tomorrow. Surely there's a mistake on the bill," he thought to himself. But there was no mistake. "Please connect me to the billing department," Jim requested when he called the clinic from his office the next day. "How can I assist you?" the receptionist asked. "Good morning. My wife, Linda Gardner, visited your clinic 2 weeks ago and I think we were overcharged for her visit. She had a routine exam and a B12 shot," he explained. "But we received a bill for $125 and with insurance it should have been no more than $45. There was a brief pause. "Linda Gardner, correct?" the receptionist asked. "That's right," Jim replied. "Sir, she did receive a B12 shot, but in addition to that she also had blood work and some other tests," the receptionist informed him. "Blood work and other tests? What kind of tests?" he asked. "Sorry, sir, we're not allowed to disclose that kind of information," the receptionist replied. "Listen, Miss, Linda is my wife and I'm not asking for the test results. I just want to know what tests were done," Jim said, starting to get a little irritated. "All right, since you're her husband, it was a full blood test and a pregnancy test." "Well, thank you very much for the information. I'll pay the bill in full," Jim said after hearing the answer. Could it be said that he almost had a heart attack? Why on earth was Linda getting a pregnancy test when he had a vasectomy right after she gave birth to their second child? It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what was going on. Linda had always had issues with any type of birth control they tried, and she was staunchly against abortion. "It's murder no matter how you look at it," she used to tell him. So, after the accident that gave them their second daughter, Jim decided to take matters into his own hands. The procedure eliminated the chance of future accidents and took the abortion question off the table. At least, that's what Jim had thought up until now. 10 minutes later, he was sitting at his desk, flipping through the yellow pages in search of a private investigator. He'd never had any reason to doubt Linda's faithfulness before, but now he didn't know what to believe. Jim never imagined that surveillance on his wife would cost so much, but he had no other choice. "She always comes home at the same time, and except for the occasional team-building seminar, she always works at the office," he told the detective. "I need you to start immediately because I'm going crazy knowing she's cheating on me and I desperately need to know who it's with." Jim's next call was to a good friend who worked in the same department as Linda. "Dan, it's Jim Gardner," he began. "I have a huge favor to ask. If you don't mind, I need to talk to you outside of work. Can you meet me at Tony's Cafe after work?" "Great. See you around 5:30. Jim wasn't exactly sure how to approach Dan with this kind of request, but he figured that since they'd known each other for a long time, a direct approach would be best. They were sipping beer when Jim sighed. "Dan, I just found out that Linda's cheating on me. I think it's someone from her office. It's probably been going on for at least a couple of months, and I need to find out who it is." Dan was stunned. "Linda would never do that to you, Jim. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake, Dan. I have proof. I just need to know who it is." "Jim, we're a small company, and I know most of the employees by name," Dan replied. "Sure, there's the usual office flirting, but nothing beyond that. Listen, there are 2 people in the office who owe me big time, and they always know if something's going on." Trust me, I'll call you if I hear anything. It's hard to believe this about Linda. Not as hard as it is for me, Jim replied. The next 3 days were awful. Jim wanted to grab Linda, shake her, and ask, why? But her answer didn't really matter anymore. Their sex life wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible either. They were intimate about twice a week. Jim thought that was pretty good considering they had 2 kids. Linda had never mentioned anything new she wanted to try in the bedroom, and she still refused to do the things Jim had always asked for. So, nothing had really changed. The only thing that came to mind was that whenever Linda came home from her monthly seminars, they never had sex that evening. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but now he was searching for anything unusual. The seminars were always held on Friday afternoons at a hotel and lasted about 2 hours. Afterward, many of the employees would skip dinner and head to happy hour at the bar. On those nights, Jim would take the kids out for a bite or stop by his parents' house for dinner. He wouldn't see Linda until around 8 p.m., the time she usually got home. Now, he questioned everything in their marriage, trying to figure out why Linda had started cheating on him. On Friday morning, Dan called. If she's cheating with someone at work, it's probably with a new guy named David Collins. He joined us last year. There's talk that they've had lunch together a few times and that they've been seen dancing during happy hour, Dan told Jim. I know that's not exactly what you were hoping for, but it's all I could find out. I hope you two can sort this out. Thanks for the info, but I don't think that's likely, Jim replied. Jim called the detective and gave him the name Dan had mentioned, then closed up shop and went home. How on earth was he supposed to play the role of a normal, loving husband when all he wanted was to throw her out of the house and continue his now shattered life alone? That weekend, he and Linda did their usual family activities. Yard work, the kids' soccer practice, and their traditional Sunday barbecue with the neighbors. Linda wanted to be intimate on Saturday night, but Jim told her his stomach was a bit upset and turned away, falling asleep. He had no intention of being with her again after learning the truth. Jim thanked God for Monday. Work was now his refuge, a place where he could relax and set the rest of his plans in motion. The last thing to do was finalize the divorce paperwork. He had already chosen a lawyer and paid the fee. They agreed to file for a no-fault divorce. Since both he and Linda worked, he was requesting a 50-50 split of their assets with no alimony payments. What was non-negotiable, however, was that Jim would get custody of their 2 daughters. If Linda didn't agree to that, he would change the grounds for divorce to adultery and send proof of her affair to everyone who knew her. He knew that when she received the papers, Linda would go ballistic, so he had already requested and been granted a restraining order. She could call the girls, but she couldn't come within 75 meters of the house. By Tuesday, the private detective had gathered the evidence, including receipts for hotel rooms. Both were from the hotel where Linda's Friday seminars took place. The receipts were in David's name. The detective had also obtained surveillance photos showing Linda and her lover walking hand in hand into a room, and in one shot, they were even kissing in the hallway. Jim said he had no desire to look at the photos. He instructed the detective to simply place everything in a manila envelope and drop it off at his office. He thanked him for the quick work and mentioned that the check would be mailed by Tuesday. By Friday, everything was set. The neighbors had agreed to watch the kids for the weekend. Both moving crews were scheduled. The locksmith was supposed to finish the work by 2 p.m. Lastly, all the paperwork was to be finalized on Monday and delivered to Linda on Tuesday afternoon. Linda has no idea what's coming, Jim thought to himself, and he hoped it would stay that way. Linda's story. I was sitting at the kitchen table, feeling sorry for myself when the movers arrived at the door. I told them to wait until Jim got back, but when the lead mover handed me an envelope, I saw what was inside and immediately knew Jim had found out everything. In the envelope was a copy of the pregnancy test I had taken at the clinic. At the time, I had initially thought I had the flu, like everyone else, but the feeling just wouldn't go away. I didn't have any body aches. I just felt a little off. One morning, Carol jokingly said, "You look like you're pregnant again, Linda." That was when the thought first crossed my mind that she might be right. When David started at our office, I had just turned 30 and was beginning to feel like an old married woman. I helped him settle in, and he was always such a pleasant young man, smelled great, and all that. David really did look good. Even though he was 5 years younger, we discovered that we liked the same music, and Mexican food was both of our favorites. Not long after, we started going to the local Mexican restaurant for lunch together and meeting for drinks after our seminars. One Friday evening, after a team-building seminar, music was playing and he asked me to dance. We danced to 2 fast songs and the third was a slow one. I hadn't slow danced with anyone since I got married, but with David it felt so natural. We floated across the dance floor, and when the song ended, we returned to our group. I felt hot. Being in his arms was so comforting. I didn't want the music to stop. After a couple of drinks, I figured it was best to head home. That night, I almost jumped on Jim. No, I didn't do anything crazy. I just really needed intimacy, and a lot of it. I knew I should have stopped spending time with David, but I enjoyed being around him. Aside from dancing and a few lunches, I didn't think I had done anything wrong. At least, that's what I told myself at the time. It was only on the fourth Friday that things started to get out of hand. Our department had won an award for having the best performance in the company for the month, and we each received a $100 bonus. Naturally, we went to the bar to celebrate. After 2 hours, only 4 of us were left. I had had too much to drink and told David that I needed to go to a restaurant and have some coffee before trying to drive home. He kindly offered to join me. On the way to get coffee, I suddenly stumbled and David caught me before I fell to the ground. As a result, one of his hands ended up around my waist and the other was holding my chest. "Are you okay?" he asked, helping me back to my feet. I don't know what I was thinking. Instead of answering, I just looked into his eyes and kissed him on the lips. It took him by surprise, but within seconds he was kissing me back. It felt like hours had passed before I pulled away, blushing. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that," I told David. "Please forgive me." "Don't worry about it, Linda," he replied with a smirk. "I'll just count it as a thank you for saving your life." "Now let's get you that coffee," he said as he led me to the restaurant. The following week, I tried my best to keep my distance from David as much as possible. I found things to do during lunch and skipped happy hour on Friday. It was especially tough when I realized I got flushed every time I imagined being in David's arms. Thinking about him was a mistake on my part. 2 weeks later, I stayed for happy hour. Jim wasn't supposed to be home until 8:30, so I had planned dinner and drinks with a few coworkers. That evening, it seemed like everyone had an excuse not to stick around for long. By 6:30, it was just me and David at the table. "How about we grab a bite to eat?" he suggested. At that moment, the music started playing and I asked David to dance with me. For some reason, the band played 4 slow songs in a row and we danced to every one of them. My heart was pounding as we glided across the floor. I was sweating profusely and I felt a rush of emotion being so close to him. How we ended up in the back seat of his car, I have no idea. We did everything except the actual act. He brought me to the brink of ecstasy several times, first with his fingers, then with his mouth. Afterward, I returned the favor to David, expressing my gratitude by ensuring he felt every bit of pleasure, down to the very last moment. It was almost 8 p.m. before we realized what time it was. After fixing my dress and hair, I kissed him one last time and headed to my car. I probably should have felt embarrassed, but for some reason I didn't. I was still on a high after experiencing intense moments of satisfaction multiple times. Honestly, I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt that much in one go. The guilt didn't hit me until I saw my husband and kids. Jim wanted to be intimate that night, but I couldn't even look at him, let alone be with him. After a long, 45-minute shower, I slipped into bed and just cuddled with him for the rest of the night. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't stop. I was hooked. Now, David and I started meeting again during lunch. I couldn't wait to see him. A week later, he told me he had booked a room for Friday evening in case I wanted to spend some time alone with him after the seminar. We left the bar separately and met in the hallway near the room. "Are you sure you want to do this?" David asked. "I'm not sure, but let's get out of the hallway before someone sees us," I replied. We hadn't been in the room for more than 10 seconds before we were tearing each other's clothes off. David's touch sent waves of excitement through me, and by the time he got closer, I was already filled with anticipation. The intensity made me cry out, though I tried to muffle the sounds with a pillow. I couldn't help but think how skilled David was, wishing Jim had the same abilities. As things moved forward, the sensations became overwhelming and I needed a moment to catch my breath, but I stayed fully present, determined to enjoy every second of it. Eventually, we both felt content and shared a few lighthearted moments before discreetly going our separate ways. I made it home with 45 minutes to spare before Jim and the kids got back. David and I met up twice more before I started feeling unwell, which I initially thought was just the flu. When Carol joked about me being pregnant, I panicked and went to the doctor. I didn't believe, or didn't want to believe, the results when they confirmed I was pregnant. David had always used condoms and Jim had been infertile since his surgery. Looking at the test results in the envelope, I realized I had been caught. In more ways than one. And so Linda sat in the kitchen, waiting for Jim to come home. She had been preparing herself to break the news to him. That's when her world came crashing down. Her marriage was over. In the aftermath, it became clear that Jim wanted to get his pound of flesh from both of them. He wanted David out of town, never to see his face again. And he wanted Linda to suffer for what she had done to their happy family. His unmarried sister Donna was moving into their house to help him with the two girls. For heaven's sake, what did he even know about raising daughters and dealing with women's issues? His parents were always there to support him, and he knew it wouldn't be easy, but they would all get through it. On Sunday evening, Jim sat the girls down next to Donna and explained that he and their mom were having some problems and that Aunt Donna would be staying with them for a while. Jim told them they could see their mom whenever they wanted, but she wouldn't be living with them anymore. They all cried and hugged, but a big bowl of ice cream helped soften the bad news. Jim. By Tuesday, Linda had been served, and though she called my cell about 20 times, I had nothing left to say to her. When she called the house, Donna answered. My sister also tried to explain that it was over, but Linda wasn't listening. I had canceled all our joint credit cards, removed her from my insurance and retirement account, and did everything else necessary during a divorce. Still, on Wednesday, I let her see the kids. Donna took the girls to meet their mom at my parents' house and stayed there until Linda left. I didn't see Linda again until we all sat down with the lawyers in their office. Linda's attorney started by making demands, one after another. When he brought up full custody of the children for Linda, I stood up and said I was leaving. We're just getting started. Where are you going? He asked, surprised. I'll say this only once, I replied quietly. The terms are as they stand. Linda can see the kids whenever she wants, but I will have physical custody. She's carrying someone else's child, and my kids will not witness the birth of her illegitimate baby. Fight me on this or anything else, and I'll make sure the whole world knows exactly what kind of woman my soon-to-be ex-wife really is. So, I suggest you think long and hard before you open your damn mouth again. We took a short break to cool down. After reconvening, Linda said she agreed to all of my terms and the papers were signed. I'm truly sorry, Jim. I don't know why I let this happen. I've always loved only you, my now ex-wife sobbed. I guess not enough, I replied. As I was leaving, I turned and looked at Linda. Since you both got so mixed up during that team-building seminar, maybe you can get compensation from the company. You know, for a workplace injury. I smirked and walked out. For the last time.